We're going to get to that in just a second, but I want to get back to the Coulter-Edwards problem, because this scuffle has sparked a huge debate about the nature of political discourse, don't you think? Do you think people, Chris, are really hungering for a more civil tone?
No, not everybody. In fact, I think that if you look at the blogs, if you look at some of the debate on television, there are a lot of people who are very much concerned that this war in Iraq was driven without intelligence, with the worst kind of intelligence, I should say, and that there needed to be a sharper debate before the war, that the problem with American journalism, if you will, is that even the established journalists did not engage in a serious debate, that we did not have all the evidence presented to us. There was an almost servile approach by the news business to this administration when it said we had to go to war with Iraq. I think we need more hustle in journalism and a bit more bustle, perhaps. Now, as to the personal things, where you have someone like Ann Coulter engaging in ad hominems and attacking someone's family and making light of the fact they lost a son at a young age, of course that's unacceptable. But in a world in which we live, we can't very well censor these things. We have to let them happen and then judge them accordingly. I'm
curious, Chris, how much you think of Ann Coulter's rhetoric is something she really believes, or if it's all just hype to get her book sold.
It really doesn't matter. The difference in between those two things is irrelevant, I have to say, Alex, because I think the fact that she's a beautiful writer, her writing is beautiful, I must tell you. And there are so many people out there, I don't want to describe them, let's say they're geeky guys, let's just call them that, geeky guys who aren't the coolest people in the world, but when they buy a book by her for 25 or 30 bucks, they can walk around the street holding an Ann Coulter book, and it gives them a certain panache, I guess. It works, and I'm sure I'm selling books right now to those guys who want to be a little less geeky. Well, she sells, look at how skinny she is, the sunglasses, the whole imagery is iconic. I mean, nobody looks like her exactly. She's brilliant at selling that imagery. And the over-the-top stuff she says, the cruel things she says, perhaps it's at a time where we live where you and I have to be very careful about what we say. Sure. People at the workplace have to be so careful about language that it gives a premium to people who sell this bad stuff for a living. It could be that. Well, I mean, look at Howard Stern and his success. Look at the success of a lot of people who say things you and I may never want to say in life. What about the win-win factor? I mean, you've discussed the win for Ann Coulter, but what about the win for the Edwards campaign, generating publicity and all of that? Well, I've said this before, and I'm a student of politics, and the attack from the defensive position is one of the great political maneuvers there is. The other side attacks, and you come back, and you're always rooted for in a kind of a David and Goliath situation. Remember, Claire McCaskill was running a very difficult race against a very smart Republican, Jim Talon, out in Missouri this last year. And all of a sudden, Rush Limbaugh, who's a very talented guy, came on radio and with the cameras rolling, made physical fun of Michael J. Fox, waving his arms around in a kind of actually a macabre version of Parkinson's symptoms. And all of a sudden, the Caskill campaign was able to raise a lot of money from supporters who didn't like that kind of attack on a person who's clearly a victim of a disease. And so you never know in these situations. It could be that this is going to be the light, the opportunity, the ignition key for the Edwards campaign going into the fall, that he's under such attack by someone who's really despised by the Democrats. That's Ann Coulter. But I got to tell you, Ann Coulter is a maestro at knowing what to say to drive book sales.
You're absolutely right. She does it very, very well. She does it with controversy, but she always seems, she's almost like the Teflon child, because it seems to bounce off of her. She still sells the books no matter what she says. You've got Republicans in Washington who are ticked off at her. They want nothing to do with her, but they still invite her to speak, and she still sells the books.
It's very hard for people somewhere in the middle who try to figure things out to sell books today. You have Al Franken on the liberal side of things. You've got Micah Moore, of course, with movies. It's very hard to find. You suggested in this conversation, Alex, what a lot of people think, that there's a hunger for civility, a hunger for the end of this trash talk, if you will. And yet, you try to write a book down the middle. You try to do the show we do at night, which is highly skeptical and highly critical, but it doesn't take a particular point of view. It just asks a lot of tough and sometimes very nasty questions. I don't mind denying that. I mean, saying that. I ask tough questions, and I do question a lot of people who come on the show in sometimes a rough way. But people seem to want an almost written code. They want a Bible. People on the left want a Bible. People on the right want a Bible. And Ann Coulter gives them a kind of a profane Bible. Here's what you can get away with saying, and people seem to delight in it. Anyway, you saw the explosion because of what she did the other day. And, of course, if Elizabeth Edwards had not phoned into this program, I don't think it would have happened. So it really is the coming together of people. You know, P.T. Barnum, the great showman who created The Greatest Show on Earth, said that if you want a crowd, start a fight.
Yeah.
And we saw it again the other day. Tonight, we're going to have this amazing intellectual debate between Christopher Hitchens, one of the smartest people in journalism, up against the guy who's always underestimated in the IQ department, Al Sharpton, who I'm telling you, I say it again and again on this program, this man, if he'd had perhaps a better further education, if you get tomorrow morning as a young guy, you should go to Yale Law. He would be one of the great attorneys of our time, Al Sharpton. He is so gifted, not just with repartee, but the way he puts together ideas and images into one brilliant sort of slabang statement occasionally, that those two together are going to be great tonight.
Oh, it's going to be absolutely great. Christopher Hitchens, one of the greatest writers. I tell you, he's got beautiful.
And by the way, he refers to himself as Christopher.
Christopher,
You can never call him Chris. I go along. I'm a Christopher too, but I like Chris. But he's one of the Christophers of our time.